Hello again, I'm Doug Smith. This is the 16 May 2014 edition of Portsmouth This Week, and our special guest this week is Ray Berberick, who is the chairman of the Portsmouth Economic Development Committee. Welcome, Ray. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Good morning.
Been on before. I want to talk a little bit about the PEDC itself. I know you just recently gave your report, your annual report for last year to the council. We'll talk about some of those things. But I'd like to start with your own personal background. Can you give us a feel for what have you been up to before you took over this job?
Well, briefly, I did 21 years in the Army as a lieutenant colonel, but the reason I mentioned that is I had two specific jobs where the skills that I learned from those jobs are really coming to bear in the work that we're doing for the EDC. One, it was the program called Battle Command Training Program, which taught us how to do mission analysis. You're given a mission, how to break it down, how to do the homework, how to do problem solving, war gaming, write mission, vision, and end states, and things of that nature. So that really has helped in the process. And then secondly, Inspector General, which is really learning how to drill down to find the root causes of the problem, how to communicate with people in order to get the right information to make the problem solving process go more smoothly.
Now, was that at the Armed Forces Staff College or at Carlisle?
No, it was at U.S. Army Command and General Staff College in Leavenworth, Kansas.
Okay, yeah. How long have you lived in Portsmouth?
17 years.
And is your family from Portsmouth?
No, we're originally from Massachusetts, and then 21 years in the Army, we're all over the world. And then my terminal assignment, interestingly enough, was up in Bristol at the Quinta Gamlin Reserve Center. There's a long story there, but they needed an active duty Army officer with my particular skill sets and additional skill identifiers, and that's where I finished up my career.
Okay, great. Why did you get involved in the Economic Development Committee?
Well, part of it is there's volunteering in my nature. I've been with Scouts. I'm on the board at Fort Adams. My parents are a firefighter and a nurse, so there's community services in the DNA, if you will. And then I moved to town in '97, and interestingly enough, that was the first year of the first tent meeting. But I was in the military and didn't have a good knowledge base, so I just couldn't jump right in. I was observing, and observed for a little bit longer, and then interestingly enough, the second tent meeting came up in '06. And it's interesting, I went to the Portsmouth Library and I found this, an article, a letter to the editor from John Stock back in October 12 of 2006, and the title is Fresh Thinking Could Solve Budget Mess. And as you know, the annual budget process is a Hatfield-McCoy dogfight, and it's about cut versus raise taxes, but this was the first guy that jumped up and said, let's start talking about raising revenue, at least in a public forum. So I just said, hey, that's the, don't matter the details, let's have the discussion.
Yeah.
So that's what got me involved.
Okay, well, that's great. Let's talk about the PED itself a little bit. How many members do you have?
Right now we have 14.
Okay. Is there any statutory limit of the numbers of people
It's
that can?
the typical town appointment process that you put in the application, the town council approves you, it's good for 3 years, and then you can renew as long as you want to stay.
Yeah, and I think most of your, if not all of your meetings are public, open to the public.
Oh, absolutely.
Anyway.
They're on the Secretary of State website. It's about OML, by the book, with the minutes, dress right, dress.
Now, you guys look at, obviously, at economic matters, of which all of this is very important to current, in the current situation here in the United States, across the country. Mm-hmm. What specifically are you guys tasked with to do for the town?
Well, the bylaws for the PEDC are right on the website, and there's two paragraphs that form our mission statement. And in essence, the town council a number of years ago, I believe it was 1998, created the Economic Development Committee as an advisory arm. And there were no details given. It was, the purpose was that the information the town council was dealing with at the time was so huge that they needed help, and they felt that if they formed an advisory committee focusing on economics, that they would be doing the homework to give the information the council needed to save the council time. By contrast, if you will, the Economic Development Committee in Tiverton is made by charter. In Portsmouth, we're not on the charter. So interestingly enough, we can be dissolved at the stroke of a pen.
Well, we hope that's not going to happen, because I think you're absolutely right.
Give the audience some bad ideas.
We do need some fresh ideas, and you guys have come up with a lot of them. I know one of the things you do is provide an annual report to the town council on kind of the state of the Portsmouth economy. And I know you just gave that to the town council. It looked like it was received pretty well this time. That's true. Well, in terms of listening to it, at
right.
least.
And all the last several annual reports are on the website. The one we gave this year in 2013 was not PowerPoint. It was intended to be simple. It was a bulletized list of a lot of stuff. There's a ton of communication ton of information to communicate, and you just don't have the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember sitting with you guys and Rich and the whole gang several years ago, and when you come in even with a dozen PowerPoint slides, it took hours to get just through the simple ones.
Yeah, no, I like your format. It's a
but
lot
but you might have seen, for those of you, that President Jim 70 started asking questions that went back to those numbers. So next year we will resurrect that. The numbers are still there. We just chose to go in a different direction because of the particular task. But this is the annual report from 2012 where we introduced the 7 imperatives. Here's the ones from 2011 and 2010. And then these have the numbers which Mr. 70 was asking about, and we'll put an interim update so everybody can see that.
Okay. I think one of the things that people think about a lot when they talk about economic development is that we're trying to condoize the town or something, you know, and I don't think that's the case. Very briefly, can you explain why economic development is important for the town?
Well, going back again to the annual budgeting process, I mean, that's in essence what I see is drives the train. And then when we witness it every year, where the town administrator and the finance director, along with the department heads, do all of their initial work from January to April, consolidate it all, put in a provisional or the draft budget, then there's some adjusting, then you go to the provisional budget, and then you go to the formal approval. As the gap, close the gap, which is buried in all our information, every year I don't want to say it's assumed, it's an expectation that revenues are going to be less than expenses. We have to operate that way.
Okay, and that's the gap.
That's the gap.
Revenues and expenses.
And then how do you address that? Well, in the first 3 simple ways are cutting from the budget or raising taxes, and the third way is generating revenue. And I'll let you in on a little trial balloon secret here. We're putting together a paper that the PEDC is going to address that process, not in detail in terms of numbers, but a process dialogue, and then throw in concepts like maybe regionalization, selling town land, and some other third rail issues. But to prompt the dialogue, to put all the skunks on the table to see what all of the options are.
This is not a good place to be opening up a secret if you want to keep it a secret.
Understand.
But yeah.
Well, just like the White House does, you know.
You know, I think somebody explained to me once back when I was on the PEDC that made a lot of sense. Essentially, you need business development because it ends up, and I think this was the question that Jim 70 had. There are figures that show that the average homeowner, which is a big part of our tax base, essentially it costs us more to provide the services for them than they pay in taxes.
Let me go back and second part to answer that previous question for the audience, that the mission, as I see it, the purpose and mission of the EDC within the bylaws as the economic advisory arm to the town council is our focus primarily is on that generate revenue side as the third part of the equation on how to balance the budget. If we were able to go out and then fill out all of the commercial available land in town and say it adds $3 million to the corporate tax base, or just brings in $3 more million in property tax revenue, guess what? We don't have to raise taxes one year. But there's other dynamics and variables to that. It's not that easy, but it's the town council versus the taxpayers that do the cutting and the raising taxes part. It's the PEDC's job to take the lead on the generate revenue side.
Look at raising revenue,
precisely,
essentially.
Yep. And then to tie into your other question there, we're not condoizing the town. And then, as you know, there's a number of different groups in town, and I'm friends with all of them. I literally can have a nice dialogue with just about everybody in town. And there's folks that don't want big box, and there's good reasons for that. There's folks that don't want retail. There's folks that don't want tourism. There's folks that don't want to develop Highland Park. There's folks that don't want a town center. And if we gave if we took all of that into consideration, guess what? We're not raising revenue, and your taxes are going to go up.
Yeah, I've seen some of the objections to, for example, having a user's fee for Sandy Point Beach for residents.
Yes.
And the thing is, the fact that somebody's been going there all their life for free, to me, is not really a good reason for not doing it if you need money.
Well, Mr. Klimm, the town administrator, is looking at all town properties that have revenue-generating potential,
Yeah.
and we're trying to, as best as we can, look for intelligent ways to generate more revenue from the town. And sometimes you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet.
Okay, let's go to the, you sort of broken this down for like economic development for dummies, kind of, and you have 7 imperatives and 3 initiatives.
Right.
Can you talk about those? That's kind of a good way of summarizing, I think, what your report is.
In putting the 7 imperatives down, it just, I have got a box of material, and you look at the governor hired the company called Fourth Economy, and they issued a report, and then Senator Piva Weed had Moving the Needle report from 2013. The House, back in 2013, put together an 18-bill economic package. You have Commerce RI and Rhode Island Foundation with a traveling roadshow called Roadmap RI, putting forth their economic intersections report, which is essentially the same process we're doing, but at the state level. And then there's even bothered to take a look at what Gina Raimondo's economic platform is, to see if there's any good ideas in there. But the 7 imperatives are a synthesis of the major concepts of all of the guidance that's out there. And close the gap that's our purpose. And then the others are vision, plan, promote, attract, streamline, and direct. And then this is where the military comes back in. You got to have a plan. And then when you write a plan or an operations order, you got to have a vision statement. Because the vision statement gives guidance in the absence of detail or specific orders. It's an overarching statement that helps guide the effort in the absence of. Yeah,
I congratulate you a lot for getting that passed and accepted by the town council. Because I agree with you totally that we need something to give us guidance going forward. And I think you've established that now. So that's a major accomplishment of the EDC, for which I give you guys a lot of credit.
Thank you. Well, and that's not an original idea. And then we started that process 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Then, so close the gap. That's all our efforts are oriented there. We've got the vision statement now. We've got our guidance and our parameters. Now we're working on, with Gary Crosby and Mr. Klimm and others, a bunch of others, on the economic development section of the Town Comprehensive Community Plan, which we call the plan. And we could spend a whole show just on that. In fact, I know you've had Gary in here on that, but the PDC is taken, instead of just simply leaving it in the hands of the town planner and let him write that whole bloody thing, that the PDC has taken ownership and to help Gary write that and do a lot of homework. We've gotten a list of all of the town property, a list of all of the available commercial property, a list of all of the businesses, a list of the businesses that have storefronts. So we have good resolution of what's in town inventory-wise. Then we use the principles of smart growth, the work that came out of the 2009 workshops and some of the other stuff from economic intersections, and all that other stuff goes into the mix. Then I have a very talented yet diverse committee where literally all points of view are represented. I have folks from the agricultural committee. I have folks who are real estate developers. So I've got no growth versus unbridled growth and everything in between. Yep. And then I've got process people, and I've got residents who've been in town for 40 or 50 years. So I've got a historical aspect, I've got a process aspect. Any idea that we bring forward has already been thoroughly vetted, I can assure you of that.
I know another one that you mentioned is promoting current businesses.
Correct.
something I've always thought that the Portsmouth Business Association should be doing anyway.
Well,
And you're a member of that.
and guess who the motivation for that is?
You're kidding.
No, that's no.
So this does work. All this
you
sniping
kept
from
hammering along, enough. But no, it makes sense that I've forgotten the Latin phrase when you argue. If you take something to an extreme, it can show you that you better change your behavior. So what if you took all of the businesses out of town? Guess what? The residents, the homeowners are now 100% responsible for the tax base. You think budget fights are bad now? So you got to bring in business to take the pressure off the residents. And the more businesses you can bring in, that's good. Now there's the law of diminishing returns. There's a finite amount of land. But that's another discussion for another day. But nonetheless, there's empty land out there, and there are things we can do to take the pressure off the residents. The more corporate we bring in, the less that we have to even consider raising taxes. So it's a kind of a three circular dog chase the tail argument, but it's possible.
What about, like one of the things I know that Bill Clark's job is to attract new businesses to come to Portsmouth. And again, I've always thought that something like that would be something that our town planner could get a hold of too. I think the problem with Gary is he's like a one-armed paper hanger. He does
Absolutely.
7,000 things at
Yes.
once he's supposed to be doing. And I'm delighted that you guys are giving him a hand on all this stuff, kind of acting like a staff in a way for him on some of these issues.
Well, and that's part of it is based on all that homework we've done, the inventory and the analysis, the smart growth principles. We've reached out to Scott Wolf and Grow Smart, Tina Dolan down at AIPC, Jody Sullivan at Newport. I'm in touch with Jared Rhodes up at Statewide Planning. A bunch of folks. They're carbon copied on all of the stuff we're doing, so it's no secret to the folks that are involved in economic development at the local, regional, and state levels know what Portsmouth is doing. And then we get some good ideas back from them. But what we do now is we start to begin to take the list and then given the townspeople and their desires to try and find that middle ground in between big box retail, tourists, and so on. What fits in town? Do we need another liquor store? Well, no, there's 4 in town. We really don't. So we're not going to, if a 5th liquor store wants to come in, we're not going to say no. But we're going to try to come up with a very intelligent process and
Proactively, yeah.
and then just say, hey, here's space for these kinds of businesses in town. It's a wish list kind of thing. And I have to give credit to Alan Schurz, who schooled me. He says it's ultimately the landowner that gets to choose what goes in there. So Alan,
As a landowner, you
yes,
should know.
I've got your picture painted. So, but we're going to try to find some fundraising through grant writing, and then hire a professional marketing team to come in and help us write a really good professional marketing plan. It'll include Facebook, our webpage. Thanks to Rich Talipsky and gang for putting that together. It still helps to have all that archival information there, and we use it as news. We got the Facebook page for current stuff, the website for archival purposes, and then that is already a plus going forward, so the marketing people don't have to start it from scratch. We could make flyers, advertising. I mean, we'll let them figure out all of the details, but we'll already have a list of here's the ones we want, here's the ones we don't. What else do you need from us? Go to work and come back with a good plan.
Let me put a plug in for a former 375th Steering Committee stalwart. If you want to do some marketing, and actually she's a member of the PBA as well, talk to Jane Ruggiero.
I know her.
The kid is dynamite.
Right.
I totally, highly recommend her.
Well, I got to talk to the town administrator. Just say for laughs that we do find somebody that's kind enough to ship us 10 grand, and then we go out to RFP. We'll have to, take that all into consideration.
Okay, well, one of the things that you recommended that was also approved in concept, I understand, was the idea of an economic council.
Right.
Now, what is that about?
Well, we got the 7 imperatives going, and then as we were in the last 16 months or so, as we were in committee, and we're trying to hammer out the details for the vision statement and hammer out the details in the first draft of the economic development section, the plan, some questions came up, and then we were asked to comment on some other economic stuff, topics. And And it said like, well, we didn't know about that. And a lot of times I would sit there and even the 5 years I was there, is that sometimes it seemed like the PDC was the second to last to know about a particular developer that was going on, or somebody opened a new store, and it's like kind of embarrassing. You know, it's like, we didn't know that. And so my frustration, and then actually if you go on Patch or East Bay newspapers or the EDC website, I've written a little article about the rationale for the Economic Council. The bottom line is the three new initiatives. One, wanted to get the town council themselves, all 7 of them, whenever they had the opportunity, to use the bully pulpit to promote economic development. It can be as simple like when they're out and about in town and they meet somebody and they say, look, you got a problem? Go join the PDC, or go to their meetings, or get on their website and send them an email.
Yeah.
You know, just help us sell the process.
Yeah.
And then the second one goes back to that communications thing. And here's a very good example that hasn't happened yet, but it was supposed to happen last night at the zoning meeting. And it has to deal with the person that wants to have a business, and there's a restriction in the zoning ordinance. She's got a box that's 600 units large, but the zoning ordinance only allows you to work in 150 units. So we're not going to go to the zoning board and say, change your mind. It's work with her within the parameters. But maybe we ought to take a look at the zoning ordinance and make a modification to it. So it's the Economic Council where that would be the forum to deal with something like that. There's nothing
because
like
it would
that
have
now.
reps from these different
Precisely.
organizations. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not a decision-making body, it's an information exchange. And it said, okay, hey, somebody's taken a look at the Raytheon properties. Okay, is everybody on the same sheet? Okay, here's the guidance. Whoever the top dog is, here's the guidance, okay? If a reporter asks you a question, because of the sensitive nature we are on this timeline, it's the town planner that needs to address that, or the town administrator.
Yeah.
So it's not a decision-making body. It's not meant to subvert the town council or supplant the EDC. It's complementary to the EDC, but it facilitates economic development and primarily through exchange of information.
You know, getting back to your first point on this Economic Council, I've always thought that our town council members, all of them, should be the biggest promoters we have of Portsmouth.
Absolutely.
I mean, they should be pro-Portsmouth all the way. And what you don't want to hear is our own council members getting up and talking negatively about this beautiful town.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you can get those guys on board and, like you say, use the bully pulpit, which they have.
Well, and actually not trying to be funny, but in the next couple of weeks, as we wind down the budget process and as candidates declare for town council coming up at the end of June, I am good friends with both Jeff Richard and Len Katzman, and I'm going to go to them and say and give them a big giant package of all this stuff, saying it would be really cool if all your candidates could articulate this stuff. Yeah. If you know what I mean.
Absolutely right. That's great. I look forward to see, because then when we see their interviews, their pre-election interviews at the
same thing.
Sheila
And then
does.
to give credit to Connie Harding and Preserve Portsmouth, she had a very nice survey done the last election. So some tough questions there too, but hey, it's communications.
But you got to ask the tough questions.
It's communications.
Absolutely. One area that many of us think, and I expect the people on the show last week, folks from the Portsmouth Historical Society, were talking about the kind of lack of grant writing expertise in town for not just, like they're kind of a separate organization, but I think just generically, it seems like Middletown, Newport, Bristol, Tiverton, a lot of these places are constantly going out and getting grants, and I don't see a lot of that coming to Portsmouth.
Well, we hope to change that, because I've got a draft grant application in as we speak, and it's new to me, and that's a whole different writing style and a vocabulary.
Exactly, and what I'm wondering about is if volunteers could possibly be part of that solution.
That would be awesome.
You know,
that would really be good.
I think there's two parts of this. One is finding the grants.
Yeah.
You know, keeping an eye out for the
Well, Scott
grants.
Wolf has pointed me in that direction.
And then two is, like you say, writing in a totally different language. And,
exactly. You caused a thought. Go ahead. There was something.
No, I just, as I say, this might be something that a small group of volunteers could help
It
with.
was before that. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay. I know the other big thing that you guys have been doing, and you've been doing this for over a year now, is working on the comp plan. I guess this is part of your work for Gary Crosby, and yet there's an economic section of the comp plan.
Right.
What have you guys put together for? Is that completed? Have you turned that into them?
Well, actually, we were under the impression when we started back in January 2013 that at the timeline that it had to be done by 2014. So we hustled and put together a very Spartan draft. And it's on the website. It was part of the 2013 annual report, and it's in a framework of goals, implementations, and policies in the format that the statewide planning office likes, but it's very cryptic. But nonetheless, it's in the absence of nothing, it does have a laundry list of ideas. So, I know what it was, the historical thing. One of the things would be, I don't know if you've been to Shelburne Farms in Burlington, Vermont, south of Burlington, Vermont. It's an old farm that looks a lot like the Glen Stables that they turned into this major tourist attraction, and they're doing well, thank you very much. Something along those lines. How about a Cape Cod Melody tent? Is it time to reinvigorate the discussion about maybe putting one in town somewhere? And there's a host of other ideas like that, but anybody that has ideas, go to ideas at Portsmouth RI EDC. It's on the Portsmouth EDC website. Just shoot us your ideas,
okay, so
and it goes into the mix.
Contact you guys directly that
Absolutely.
way.
Absolutely.
Well,
through patch, letters to the editor.
Yeah, that'd be the best
in
way.
town at the coffee shops.
So are you guys following up with more? When is Gary going to have this? Because I'm going to get Gary on the program.
Right. He's actually has some helping him put together. Now the comp plan is got 18 chapters,
it's
and
huge.
it's a monster. So we've told him we've got the con for the economic development section, which is our plan imperative. We gave him enough, at least not enough to be dangerous, but something. But we talked about it in detail, and now that's where we've gone back. The grant writing, the draft grant application that we have has an assessment of our town, kind of a state of the town assessment in a bulletized format. Chunks of that can go into the plan, the first half of the EDS of the comp plan. Then the inventory that we did goes in there as well. So we'll get those things, we'll flesh out the remaining parts of what we gave him, and as we go forward building our marketing plan, we're going to have to make adjustments to the economic development section plan, and then Gary at one point will say, okay, I've got everything I need, thank you. Then he has to get it through the town council, statewide planning office, and that's a Herculean task in and of itself. Yeah,
but I think also that vision statement's got to be highlighted, in the front of that thing.
He actually liked it before it was approved, so that was a good thing. So he promised me it would be in there on the cover page or something.
That was a good thing. We're almost out of time here. Time flies in this program. And I'd like to, I know you do so much stuff. I'd like to thank you, by the way, for all your work on the anti-toll issue, because I know you personally, the EDC, but you personally have been out there rattling the weeds on that thing. And I'm keeping our fingers crossed. We have our two, Chris Audiano and Jay Edwards, are coming on the show on the 30th. Hopefully we'll hear about what the status is, and I hope the status is good for us. But I'd just like to thank you for your civic support. I mean, you do a heck of a lot of stuff. I know you're on the board of the Fort Adams. You're on the PBA. And keep moving those guys, because you can do it. And you're the chairman of the PEDC, so you've really been keeping busy, but I appreciate all your efforts, so thank you very much. And thanks for coming on the show today.
You're welcome.
That's about it for me right now. Doug Smith signing off, and we'll see you in the next edition of Portsmouth This Week.